Yale graduate students are on a symbolic hunger strike in order to force the university to give them more stuff. Now you may ask, what's a symbolic hunger strike? And also, when did Yale start accepting idiot clowns at their university? Is there some kind of new idiot clown department where they train idiot clowns so they can be in the stupid circus for stupid people? Well, I'm not sure about the answer to all those other questions, but a symbolic hunger strike is a hunger strike where you don't eat unless you get hungry. Then you eat. So let's say after waking up like any normal graduate student at the crack of 10 a.m., you smoke a quick doobie and then motor skateboard down to Blue State Coffee, the socially conscious cafe where you enjoy a free-range egg and bacon sandwich on a sesame bagel in the self-righteous knowledge that some portion of the price will be donated to the New Haven Pride Center to make sure the gay people at Yale don't run out of pride. Because we wouldn't want that. Then, after completing your breakfast with a healthful yogurt parfait topped with gluten-free almond granola, you motorboard down to the strike line, where you heroically don't eat a single thing until, it gets to be around noon when you start in feeling just a tad peckish, and then it's off for a quick pizza before you get down to the hard work of being a graduate student, which is grading papers and teaching a class if it happens to be Thursday. And lest you think the symbolic suffering of this symbolic strike is not a symbolically worthwhile cause, let me point out that for all this effort you're putting in, molding the minds of the young while simultaneously working on your thesis entitled Intersectional Trends of Transgender Oppression in last week's episode of The Walking Dead, you only receive a stipend of over $30,000 a year, plus the full $40 grand a year for tuition, plus health care and other benefits amounting to nearly $400,000 a year for doing what you do, which is pretending to be on a hunger strike. But all this is beside the point. You see, a modern graduate student at Yale may be the single most privileged human being to have ever existed in the whole long course of history, including those ancient Roman guys who used to lie around on cushions and drink goblets of wine while pinching dancing girls. So you have to stage a symbolic hunger strike to demonstrate that you are so symbolically courageous in the face of symbolic oppression that you're almost some kind of symbolic hero whose symbolic actions symbolize the highest symbols of symbolic human achievement. In other words, you're a leftist, symbolically courageous in the symbolic fight against symbolic hardships that don't exist. So, grad students of Yale, we here at the Andrew Klavan Show support your symbolic hunger strike, and if you're headed to lunch, pick up a pizza for me. After all, it's not like you're busy doing anything else. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show.
I feel hunky-dunky, life is tickety-boo. Birds are winging, also singing hunky-dunky-doo. Ship-shape, tipsy-topsy, the world is zippity-zing. It's a wonderful day, hurrah, hooray! It makes me want to sing. Oh, hurrah, hooray! Oh, hooray, hurrah!
It's mailbag day. I wish they wouldn't drink before the show starts, you know. It's mailbag. We have a couple of great questions in the mailbag. I am tempted to just skip the politics and get right to them, but I'm not going to. And that means that if you're on Facebook and YouTube, you will miss it because after about 15 minutes, you will be cast out into the exterior darkness where, as I'm sure you know, there is great wailing and gnashing of teeth. But if you come over to thedailywire.com, you can not only hear the rest of the show, you could subscribe and watch the rest of the show. And then next week, you could be in the mailbag where it's a little stuffy, but you get to ask some questions. Let us talk for just a moment. We talking all this talk about Obamacare, but there are 35 million U.S. families without life insurance, let alone health insurance, without life insurance, which means if you suddenly pop off, everybody who depends on you is basically left in the lurch. Now, I have life insurance that makes all the people in this room beneficiaries, and that's why I have a guard, a bodyguard, because I know these guys would kill me like that for just a couple of pennies. But you really do, if you have people you actually like in your life, like a wife or kids or something like that, you really do want to have life insurance, and the way to get it is at policygenius.com because it is the best online life insurance marketplace. It's really, really easy to use. The website is easy to use. They're not selling you anything. They just let you compare it. They have placed over $5 billion in life insurance for people just like you. It's just user friendly, and you can save over 40% off other prices for life insurance because you get to compare all the different prices. When they compete with each other, you win. So go to policygenius.com today. Save over 40% off other prices for life insurance. That's POLICYGENIUS. Policygenius.com. Zero jargon, zero sales pressure, zero hassle. Life insurance made easy, free quotes, zero hassle, peace of mind. Don't wait. Go to policygenius.com today. So yesterday, I unloaded on the budget like just about every other right-winger in America, right? You know, we all went a little bit nuts on this budget. And I wanted to step back for a minute because this is one of the problems with right-wing politics, is because right-wingers never think about the long game. Everything is always a crisis. Everything is always a disaster. We've always been betrayed. It's always we never step back and look at whether we're winning or losing the long game. You know, and the long game is all important because the long game is what the left plays so brilliantly well. The long game is the culture. The long game is the academy. The long game is the news media, all the things that shape public opinion, because as our founders knew, no law stands up, bless you, no law stands up against, I hope you have life insurance, and I hope I'm the beneficiary. No law stands up against public opinion. If public opinion turns against free speech, the First Amendment isn't going to help you one little bit, okay? So I just want to step back a little bit and look at this. Yesterday, the Trumpire struck back, basically. They started to defend their budget, and they said that they got rolled kind of by the Democrats in the press, not in the budget negotiations. So let's take a look at some of the things that they were talking about. First, let's take a look at what Rush Limbaugh had Mike Pence on, and it was a fair deal. Like, Rush really went out at him. He said, why should we vote for Republicans if this is all we're going to get? And here's one of their exchanges.
If I'm the Democrats, $21 billion, $15 billion for defense that was not originally authorized, that's a small price to pay for continuing to fund refugee resettlement, continuing to fund Planned Parenthood, continuing to fund sanctuary cities, continuing to fund the EPA and not build the wall. The Democrats clearly think this is a big win, and they're confident they can block Trump's agenda after this spending bill for the rest of Trump's term. There isn't anything of the president's agenda in this budget, and people are beginning to ask, when's that going to happen? If you're going to shut it down in September, why not now? Yeah. If you complain about 60 votes today, why not go budget reconciliation for 51 votes and smoke them?
Rush,
yes.
Rush, let me be real clear. The number one priority of President Trump is to rebuild our military, to restore the arsenal of democracy. And I got to tell you, to get Democrats in Washington, D.C. to agree to a $21 billion increase in a short-term budget bill. And, you know, the president's calling for the largest increase in military spending since the Reagan administration in the upcoming budget, I think it's no small accomplishment. Also, this bill includes the largest increase in border security funding in 10 years.
Okay, so this is the important thing here is that the deal on sequestration was that you couldn't, for every dime that you spent on the military, you had to spend money on social programs. And that was part of Obama's plan, A, to, overwhelm us with social programs, and B, to destroy our military, which he was doing an excellent, excellent job of. So they broke that. They broke the hold of that, and that's important. Trump also points out that even though he was talking before the Air Force Academy, and he points out that even though he didn't get money for the wall, he got a lot of money for increased border security. So here's the second Trump cut, Trump on the border.
We achieved the single largest increase in border security funding in 10 years. So we have more money now for the border than we've gotten in 10 years. So the Democrats didn't tell you that. They forgot. In their notes, they forgot to tell you that. With enough money to make a down payment on the border wall. I think they'll go back and check their papers. This includes swiftly replacing ineffective and failing fencing and walls with an unbreakable barrier. So we're putting up a lot of new walls in certain areas. We're putting up a tremendous amount of money to fix the existing structures that we have, some of which we can keep into the future. They're in good shape, but we have to bring them back to the highest level. We'll be doing that with this payment.
Okay, so that's, this is his chance to make his plea. Because what they're complaining about? What they're complaining about is they went down and they sat down and they had bipartisan negotiations. They needed the extra votes to pass this thing. And then the Democrats ran out and said, we win, we win, we win. And of course, whatever the Democrats say gets echoed by the press. So now they're all kind of feeling like they got a little bit stabbed in the back. But that's politics. I mean, that's the Democrats doing a good job at what they do. But according to the Wall Street Journal, which has been very good about this stuff, despite their claims, Democrats did not preserve funding for Planned Parenthood. Now, this is a big one because obviously I don't want my tax dollars going to these people. But the bill contains no direct dollars for that group, but rather funds grants that will be issued by Health and Human Services, which is now unlikely to approve any for Planned Parenthood. So that's a little bit different than we heard. It all depends now on where those grants go and what they're used for. Somebody asked me in the mailbag if they're not allowed to use the money for, even Planned Parenthood is not allowed to use the money for abortions, but that's ridiculous. Money is fungible. It doesn't matter whether you give it to Planned Parenthood, you give it to an abortion provider. It doesn't matter what they use it for. They're just shifting other money to the abortion, so it doesn't really matter. Most of the domestic funding increases and decreases are GOP priorities. The bill contains $45 million to fund 3 more years of Washington, D.C.'s popular school voucher program, as well as money for Western wildfire fighting and disaster-related repairs at NASA. Conversely, the bill zeroes out dollars to the International Green Climate Fund, set up as part of the Paris Climate Accord, and it rescinds, consolidates, or terminates more than 150 federal programs or initiatives, including such high priorities as the Christopher Columbus Fellowship, on and on. The important thing here, what the bill doesn't do. So in other words, it was a negotiation, right? The bill was almost finished by the time by the time Trump came in. It's a negotiation. But the important thing here is they've got to stop with these omnibus spending bills because nobody can read them. They used to be in 12 separate appropriation bills, and then you would negotiate, and you could really get into the weeds and lose on one appropriation bill and win on another. They've got to get back to that. And that is not up to Trump, obviously. That's up to Congress, but they really have to start talking about that. But, So again, a compromise, not what we want from these guys. We want them to drain the swamp. It's not draining the swamp. It's not changing the way Washington works. It's just supplying the money to it's business as usual, and that's not why Trump was elected. So it is a loss overall, but it's not a disaster. It's just a loss overall, and that is what, like I said, Trump has shown himself to be very good at the part of government that is like business, but not so good so far at the part of government that's like government, and hopefully he's going to pick that up, okay? But let's talk about something else. A picture came out of Steve Bannon. Everybody loves Steve Bannon. I mean, is there a nicer, warmer personality than Steve Bannon? Steve Bannon took a picture with the conservative rabbi Shmuley. What is his last name? Gotich. Let's see. Anyway, so the rabbi Shmuley Botich. That's his name. Shmuley Botich. And so the rabbi tweeted this, and it showed them standing in Bannon's office. And Drudge picked up the fact, and actually it was the Daily Telegraph that picked it up, and then Drudge repeated it, that Bannon's whiteboard is in back. And on the whiteboard, it shows a list of all the promises, the pledges, he calls them, that the Trump people made on Obamacare and on immigration, with little check marks to show which ones have been fulfilled and then others have not been fulfilled, and they're more complicated and legislative. And I just thought, that speaks so well of the Trump administration and of Bannon, that they're keeping track of what they've done and their promises. And it means something to them. It's not like Obama, who would say one thing and then do something entirely different. Their promises mean something. And they have done a lot of stuff, the stuff that is good. The New York Times, I think this was about 2 days ago, they published a cri de coeur, a cry from the heart. It's just agony coming out of the New York Times. It was like music to my ears, okay? It was just about how Trump is dismantling the Obama legacy. And at the New York Times, to see the Obama legacy it's like watching, the pyramids fall. They think Obama had a big legacy. I've always said that he had very, very little effect on our country. But just days after the November election, top aides to Donald J. Trump, I'm reading from the New York Times, a former newspaper, huddled with congressional staff members in Speaker Paul Ryan's suite of offices in the Capitol. The objective, not to get things done, but to undo them quickly. For about 3 months after Inauguration Day, Mr. Trump would have the power to wipe away some of his predecessors' most significant regulations with simple majority votes from his allies in Congress, but the clock was ticking. An obscure law known as the Congressional Review Act gives lawmakers 60 legislative days to overturn major new regulations issued by federal agencies. After that window closes sometime in early May, the process gets much more difficult. Executive orders by the president can take years to unwind regulations well beyond the important 100-day yardstick for new administrations. So, in weekly meetings leading up to January 20th, the Trump aides, and you can almost hear the anguish that they're writing this with, the Trump aides and lawmakers worked from a shared Excel spreadsheet to develop a list of possible targets, rules enacted late in Barack Obama's presidency that they viewed as a vast regulatory overreach that was stifling economic growth. And you will remember at the end of Obama's presidency, he hit the gas on regulations because he knew nobody would stop him, and he would just had his foot down on the gas. He was not expecting this. The result, and this is the New York Times direct from a former newspaper, the result was a historic reversal of government rules in record time. Mr. Trump has used the Review Act as a regulatory wrecking ball, signing 13 bills that erased rules on the environment, labor, financial protections, internet privacy, abortion, education, and gun rights. In the law's 21-year history, it had been used successfully only once before, when President George W. Bush reversed a Clinton-era ergonomics rule. The effort has surpassed its architect's most ambitious hopes, and that just the rest is is liberal tears. So you know what I had for breakfast this morning. It was the rest is just this sobbing. And these regulations, this is no small thing. This is the way. This is the way that we are being controlled by the left. Hey, I got to stop. We got to turn off Facebook and YouTube. So come on over to thedailywire.com because the mailbag is coming up.